Get
To
them
me,
involved.
when you're just rattling on
Yeah.
and there's children aren't being engaged, or if you're not asking questions, you have no idea where they're at that time.
Yeah. Peter, back again, my friend. Chapter 2.
Loving it.
Looking forward to it again.
Can I
man.
crank this up?
Yeah, go for it, man. Go for it. Go for it.
Did we use the red one last week?
You know what? I can't remember, but now that I've noticed, it's good to have a red one every now and again.
I think so, man. I'm going to start putting in the sugar.
I love it. I love it. All right, Peter.
Tell me.
Again, now, man, we're going to get into chapter 2. Chapter
Yep.
2. Yeah, we've had an interesting run, and today we will discuss the law of education. So, chapter 2. Yeah, get straight into it.
Yeah. How you been finding the book again?
Man, like I said, there's a lot of value in it, like I've mentioned before, and I'm just excited to get through it. And there's so many lessons that they get highlighted to me again, and they just keep getting highlighted to me. So I look forward to getting through it, and spending some time just reviewing it with you.
Yeah.
I think that hopefully,
And I can see that you've highlighted a lot of sentences, and what I like is when I typically read a book,
yep,
I forget it. But we're just going to bring everything to the surface that's important, elaborate on it.
yep,
Mate, there's some good meat in this book,
yeah,
let me tell you.
love it. Let's get straight into it.
Okay, let's go.
Perfect, man. All right, so the law of education, we'll get straight into it. It's basically the education process which I've taken out. So we'll read a few areas and we'll try and reflect. Okay, some highlighted bits here. Okay, here we go, and it states, as an effective teacher, you must not only know that which you would teach, that is your content, but you must also know those whom you wish to teach. You are not interested simply in calculating principles, you want to infect people. Therefore, the way people learn determines how you teach. This is the law of education.
I like that opening statement, that's quite powerful.
Love it, yeah.
What say you about that?
Say it again.
What do you say about that?
So it says here that it's just not the content, it's how you teach it. Different people have different learning styles. There's no doubt that different people learn different ways, and so it's important then to be in tune with who's in front of you and their different learning styles, and just different demographics of kids. Then determine how they take in information and retain information. Can I say I'm going on 11 years in as a director of an early childhood setting, so I come across these things quite often with my staff there, that they have got many different children that they have to educate and develop, and there's definitely they're at different development stages and ages, and they've got different learning styles. So we have to also just make sure we're attuned to the way they learn. We teach in certain ways that they learn. So that's been a lot of value and understanding in that area.
I think you've got to find yourself as a teacher as well. I look at our Sunday school program. You got teachers that teach different age groups, right?
Yep.
I teach the teens.
Yep.
But I tell you now, it's not natural for me to teach the ages 5 and 6 or whatever. So I think you've got to know your level of skill set.
Sure.
Get comfortable with it, and focus in that certain area in your life. Because I know if I was to go and teach some of the younger crowd, I don't think I'd be able to communicate with them effectively. And we've got some great teachers that come down to their level, and you can see them engaged when they're interacting with them.
Yeah. So there's different ages you find that you're most comfortable with, and that's what you should sort of try and stick to.
Yep.
Okay.
Good point.
So let me continue. The teachers may excite and direct the learner's self-activities, and as a rule, tell the learner nothing, and do nothing for him that he cannot learn and do for himself. Therefore, what's important is not what you do as a teacher, but what the learner is doing as a result of what you do. The teacher is primarily a stimulator and motivator, not the player but the coach who excites and directs the players. Let me continue. The learner is primarily an investigator, a discoverer, and a doer. So again, the ultimate test of a teacher is not what you do or how well you do it, but what and how well the learner does. And lastly, good teachers cannot be focused on what they do, but what their students are doing. What are your thoughts about that, Peter? So a good teacher is a stimulator and a motivator. Okay? Stimulator and a motivator is what it says. And so our job is to stimulate and to motivate and get them excited about the learning. That went up quick.
All right, fantastic.
Love it. So, stimulator and a motivator. So, what about for you? Have you got any examples of, or just different times where you stimulated and you really helped engage and motivate and sort of get students to be part of the learning process?
Okay. I suppose one of the tactics that I like to apply during one of my lessons is I don't like to stay in one spot. I'm a person that moves around. I've got my hands in the air. I go up to a student. I kind of,
Keep them engaged?
Absolutely, keep them engaged. Go for eye contact. I change the tone of my voice. Sometimes when I'm serious, I might come low, but when I'm, when I want to engage them and just make it a little bit more exciting, I'll raise my voice. So I can do that in class. And that helps me engage the student. Look, there's always a student you're going to struggle with. Let's be honest. There's always a student that may have certain life issues that you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Okay, and you'll find that during class times they will not interact. So what do you do there? It's hard. I think some of that work needs to be done behind the scenes.
When they don't want to engage in class, you can see that there's a disconnection there.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Or you can see them wandering out the window. No matter what you do, you can wear a clown suit and you won't have them. So I suppose...
So you're saying it's a reflection of what has been happening previous to coming to class?
Yeah, in their life.
Gotcha.
And some kids are troubled. So I suppose the tactic that I like to do is sometimes do a bit of investigative work to find out where they're at, maybe speak to their parent. But more so, I try to engage in conversation outside the class. If I can win them that way, or if I know what the issue is and I can kind of not be direct with them, but kind of just walk on the outskirts of the issue, there's a possibility that child may open up with me and then I can engage him in that conversation. If I could win him or her during that conversation, it makes it easier for me to engage with them in class. So I do keep a mental note of which kids are engaging and which aren't, because it's important that you know your students. We've said it many a time. Don't be one of those teachers that love the ministry but not the kids. You're fooling yourself and you're wasting time. Know your children, and they covered that, and I found that a very powerful point. So
which part?
The one where they say know your students here earlier, and especially that classic saying, therefore the way people learn determines how you teach.
So the way people learn determines how you teach, and it says our job is to stimulate and to motivate.
Yep.
If we're giving out information or we're sort of directing the class, if you find that it's going over the children's heads, stop. You got to rethink the way you're delivering the information.
So here's the question: how do you know it's going over their head?
Okay, it goes back to knowing your students. And knowing your students, so that way you're in tune, and you have an understanding of them, and you're in tune with them. Can
I suggest another means? That I like to.
One sec before you suggest another means. One, you said you go and you might engage with them outside the class just to get. That was so important for you saying that, because when you said that, you know what it says to a student? It says to a student, "Oh, wait up. My little life here and my little problem, someone sees me and I feel valued. I feel valued and I feel important. Now there's a sense of connection between you and me." And that is the bridge to education or guiding and teaching the kids. So when you said that you go up to the child outside the class,
Yeah.
you know, there's so much value on that. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
That's a pretty good call that you made there.
Mm.
The other way that I kind of determine where the children are at during class is I ask questions. So while I'm speaking, I might even turn around and say, "Do you kind of understand what I'm trying to say here?" And I kind of gauge the look on their faces. When they look displaced, I kind of know I may have lost them. And that's when I'll turn around and say, "Okay, let me just give you another angle."
Gotcha.
Or I'll ask questions, and then I'll see what they're giving me in return, which determines how much they've absorbed from what I'm saying. So you have to be in tune in that respect.
Sure. Get
To
them
me,
involved.
when you're just rabbling on
Yeah.
and the children aren't being engaged, or if you're not asking questions, you have no idea where they're at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that makes a successful class, because when the kids are getting it, they will enjoy it.
Yeah.
The greatest joy that I get when they're walking out every lesson is when the children come up to me and say, "Thank you, Uncle Pete, we enjoyed that."
Sure. And why is it, do you think, that they say they've enjoyed that? And it's not to put you up on a pedestal. You probably
No.
got your own flaws and things
well,
like that.
I do have a helper in there, Michael Saba, the great Michael Saba,
Michael Saba.
which interjects himself.
That now it makes sense to me. Yeah. On your Mick, we love you.
And one of the other comments he said to me when I drink my coffee while we're doing these video programs, he goes, "Don't slurp your coffee because you can hear it on camera." This one's for you, buddy.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, that's great. Anyway.
So in saying that, you're right, because why is it? Do you think? Thanks, Uncle Peter. I really enjoyed that, because I know from my son, he says he comes to me and he sort of recites everything that you've said in class, and you've for him personally, you've engaged him. He's engaged in your style of teaching. Now that's my son, but what do you think that is?
Number one, I know my students. It's taken me years to get there. Number two, I know what level they're at. So when I want to go deeper in the word, I will break it down at their level and take them on a journey they probably haven't been on. I'm not here just to recite material.
Gotcha.
I want them to understand the material that we're teaching. So I'll take them. I always say, "Get ready, put your scuba tanks on, because we're going deep today, kids."
Yeah, okay.
Do you want to go deep today? Yes, Uncle Pete, we want to go deep. I go, "It's not going to be easy, but you've got to try and stay in tune with me and keep up with what I'm saying. And if you don't get it, ask questions." It's that constant interaction. Asking, "You're with me? Okay, do you get it?" "Yes, I do." "Look, I might be struggling. Okay, let me just break it down this way."
Gotcha.
Communication.
Gotcha. I love it. Okay, we'll continue. I think that's great.
Yep.
Beautiful. The next point here is the tension, and the learning begins. So this discusses tension and about how to, let me just read it, and how to sort of, if the children are at a state of sort of rest, their mind's a state of rest, we need to spark them, get them thinking, challenge them a little bit and create some tension so there's learning. But let me read these points here. The learning begins. The art of teaching and the difficulty of learning is getting people to place themselves at the beginning of the learning cycle, to plug into the bottom so they can start the learning process. There's no growth, there's no development, there's no learning without tension. Tension is absolutely indispensable to the process. Be sure, too much tension leads to frustration, stress, anxiety, but too little tension produces empathy. So God moves into our lives by divine design to periodically disturb our equilibrium. That helps us that's how He develops us. What do you think about that? It discusses tension, and it says here, without tension, there's no learning without tension.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. I'm not sure where the author's going with that, but the one thing that you kind of said that made sense is God disturbs our equilibrium.
Yeah, a state of rest, our mind.
Okay, that I'd focus on.
Okay.
What does that mean? Okay, so in other words, if I'm thinking out aloud, if the child comes in and they're complacent,
Yeah.
they're not excited, but you know what, they're just there for the ride, as many students are because their parents bring them to Sunday
Sure.
school. So I suppose the way God disturbs our equilibrium is he catches our attention.
Uh-huh.
Okay, maybe through preaching, maybe through an event in our life.
Yeah.
So I suppose what the author's trying to explain here is we've got to disturb the equilibrium of the child. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Or do you see it a different way?
Well, they want to disturb the state of rest. If you're just cruising through your notes and you're just discussing certain things and you really aren't sparking any interest from the kids and getting them thinking and getting them out of their state of their rest, and you aren't sparking the interest to learn and to think and to, I'm not quite sure, what did he really say? If you're not sparking the children into a learning process, that's what I think that there's no growth or development. If a child is at a sort of in a neutral state of mind, then how can he grow and develop? That's what it's saying. There's no learning or development without that tension, that pressure.
Therefore,
That's what I take.
Bobby, now I've just made a statement. I want to know, what are your thoughts on what I just said? Tell me, what's going through your mind right now?
Now you're making me think. You're making me...
You know, I suppose using different tools and tactics, and I do that quite often if you want to know the truth. Not to make the child feel uncomfortable, but hey, I could be next, so let me stay in tune with what this teacher's saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I make it fun. I break the ice.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I will always, no matter what they say, to some degree, say, you know what, you're applying thought. Keep going. I encourage them, and I always tell them, I want you to think. And we'll touch base on that later on.
And let me just continue.
Yeah.
It says here, but too much tension
Yeah.
leads to frustration, stress, and anxiety.
Mm.
If you're asking and expecting too much from them, you're putting too much pressure onto them. That's no good. So you've got to find
100%.
that place where you can spark them into the learning, but not too much where there's a mountain and you're building this anxiety and frustration in them.
Knowing your students. See, I can do that with your boys.
Yeah.
Because you know what? They can take it and they enjoy it and they thrive on it.
Yeah.
And you know what? They're not afraid to express their thoughts. And let me just say, some of the thoughts that come out of these children is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Unexpected. And I'm like, wow. And there's been moments where I've turned around to Mick and said, Mick, did you hear what he just said? Or what she just said? I go, man, that's fantastic.
Peter, you know, when you say that, ultimately, we've discussed it before, ultimately it comes down to your relationship with them. That allows you to, you know, to push that a little bit more, because you've got an understanding and they understand you. That relationship is so important.
Yep.
So that's that. So a little bit of tension there. Don't allow them to stay in a neutral state of mind or in being in the class, because they're not going to learn or develop in that state. Spark them, create some tension there.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, cool. And so I'll just on the same. Continuing on that point, remember that Jesus, although these are the highlighted bits, you know, the whole book is great, just highlighted bits that jumped out. Remember that Jesus Christ, although he was a son, he learned obedience by the things he suffered. Do you keep the people in your class feeling comfortable, or do you let the equilibrium be disturbed so that they realize, I've got to study God's word more and think more. I've got to try this out in real life. So do you spark them to think? Basically, one of the things I use extensively as a teacher is role playing. It heightens the learning if you role play in class. Incidentally, a role playing situation can really open up the learner's involvement. So, have you created opportunities where you get them to role play and really? It says here that it opens up the learning involvement, role playing.
I think that's a great application to try out. I kind of do it from a different way. I get the child to place themselves in the position, in the character in the Bible.
It's like mental role playing.
Yeah. So I said, what would you do if you were in that position? I want you to think. Mm-hmm. Okay? Like you might be discussing a specific passage in the Bible. For example, the woman at the well in Samaria when Jesus approaches her. and she's not understanding when Jesus says, "And I will give you the life-giving water," where he's talking about salvation, but she thinks it's literally water. And I turn around to the child and I said, "Hey, don't blame her, because if you weren't exposed to the scriptures like she wasn't, and you heard somebody say that to you, you'd be like, what is this person talking about?" So I want you to understand who these characters are. And we kind of use that tactic to help them understand the characters of the Bible, and not to be condemning or judgmental, but to realise, hey, majority of the characters in the Bible, just like you and I, and the ones that made mistake, we probably would have made the same mistake, hands down. So that's I suppose what I do.
Mental role playing.
Well, everyone's different, I suppose, and I suppose I might take that on board. I think that would be greater with the younger kids.
Yep.
But when you're starting hitting teens, you've got to take them on a deeper journey.
Yep.
So I don't know, maybe.
Some thoughts to the book.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll continue. That's that. So the next point here, and you guys have read it as well. It says, "What in the world are you doing?" So these are some highlighted points. If you didn't know what I was doing, there was a good possibility that they didn't know what they were supposed to do. It says here, "How about you? Do you have a clear-cut objective for your teaching? Do you know how to give a true education?" So there's 3 basic skills. Basically, it's saying here, what do you think it's saying here? It's saying to prepare. If I didn't know what I was doing, there's a good possibility. If you don't know what you're doing, there's a good possibility the kids are not going to know what to do. And so how about you? Is there clear-cut objectives to your teaching? It continues here by saying there's 3 basic goals. Teach people how to think. If you want to change a person permanently, make sure his thinking changes and not merely his behavior. Okay? Your task as a teacher is to stretch the human mind. Some points there. We continue. If you think about it, the people you recall as the best teachers in your life were probably those who planted seeds, and you are still reaping the harvest from them today. Interesting thought. Don't ever get hung up on specific lesson that you forgot this fact. Don't get hung up on a specific lesson that you forgot this fact. Good teaching and true education consists simply of a series of teachable moments. There's a dynamic of unpredictable timing involved, so that when you break through the learner's mind and heart, a readiness to learn is there. Let me ask you about this, and this is what stands out to me. Good teaching and true education consists of a series of teachable moments. So it isn't just this one time, it's a series of teachable moments. What do you think about that, Pete? What do you think about teaching people how to think?
Okay.
Being prepared? Have you got clear-cut objectives?
All I can say is hey at this particular point, because if there's one thing that I emphasise to the class almost weekly is, guys, I want you to think. When I ask you a basic question, do not give me a basic answer. Let me explain. A lot of our children have been born and raised in the Christian faith.
Yeah.
So if you ask them a simple question, what's salvation? To ask Jesus into your heart. Yeah, that's correct. But you're not thinking right now. And I tell them, please apply thought to your answer. If I ask you, what is salvation? I want you to describe to me in detail what repentance is. That moment when you come to understand what the Lord has done for you, when you acknowledge your sin and you're truly sorrowful for it. You know, it's that kind of level that I'd like to kind of take them at. So when they give me an answer in regards to a question that I've asked them, I don't want the typical Christian response, and they know this. And I teach them it's all right to have critical thinking. It's all right to challenge. I've had some of the greatest students I've had are the ones that would challenge me on some ideology or in regards to a difference that they have a thought on scripture. And I love it because it helps us to kind of apply a lot of thought to it and break it down.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
What if there's something that you don't know? If you've got to ask a question, and there's something you just
Great question. This is what I say to a lot of the teachers. If a student asks you something you don't know, this is your response. I don't know how to answer that, but I'll come to you next week. I'll go and ask the pastor. I might read up on it myself, and I'll come to you next week. So it's okay to say, I don't know. Nothing wrong with it. And you asked me another question, how, what was it? How do you make changes? I mean, the improve change of behaviour, don't understand. I suppose, I forgot what the question is, but I kind of remembered the answer.
teach them how to think.
Yeah. How to make an impact, was it?
Stretch the human
Was it
mind.
something like that?
Okay, teaching is made up of teachable steps,
Okay, teachable moments.
teachable moments.
What's a teachable moment? I suppose for me, some of the teachable moments is when I can just take them into my life and share with them something that's personal. For example, where my struggles are. Maybe something that I've done in my past that I regret, but I don't highlight the sin. We never do that. But I want them to see I'm a broken man. You know, when I've counselled people in the past, for example, they've asked me a question, I tell them, yeah, I know what you mean. I've been down that path. They said, well, how could you be down that path? You're this, you're this, you're that. I said, what's that got to do with it? I probably have a worse past than most people. And you know what? Not to glorify it, but I can use it to create these teachable moments with the students.
And to show them how God gets you out of any situation.
Absolutely. They're real
That's the
life
point.
situations.
That's the point we want.
And I found every time you start speaking about yourself, that's when most students just become attentive.
Sure.
And they start listening. Oh, what happened in his life? And you know what? It's the same when we preach. The minute you start talking about your personal life,
You've
the
engaged
minute
me.
they, oh, yep, I wonder what he's going to say about that.
Even
I've
the
got your
parables in the
attention.
Bible, as soon as there's a parable that kicks in,
Yeah.
I'm like, king.
Yeah.
It sort of engages me.
Absolutely.
That's cool. All right, we'll move on.
Yes.
All right. Another goal is teach people how to learn. Create learners who perpetuate the learning process for the rest of their lives. What is that word?
Perpetuate.
Perpetuate. There you go. Perpetuate the learning process for the rest of their lives. Learning is always a process. It's going on all the time. Teach people how to learn. It's a process. So to get people involved in the process of learning, give them first the big picture. Okay, I want to discuss this. Some people sharp, articulate, capable individuals who've been in our churches all their lives and still don't know the name of the game because it's the breaking down into parts that we tend to specialize in. What it's saying here is give them the big picture. I know for myself that I learn particularly personally, is when you give me this big picture. Okay, you give me this is where we're going, this is what we're trying to achieve, and
So here's the mountain.
here's the mountain.
How do we climb it?
Yeah, and let's break it down to teach you how it gets climbed. You know, so give them the big picture. This is what we're trying to learn today, or this is what we, for whatever reason, and then okay, now I know where we're going. Now, bring them down into the steps and take them there. That's one way. I know that you have another way where you work the other way, and then you just work on the steps, and then you give them a visualization of where we're going. But me personally, I'm just saying from my experiences, I like it where you show me where we're going. This is the big picture, and then now I know where we're headed. Then you give me the steps. Every steps that we're working on, I know where we're gonna head towards, and that engages me as a learner.
Now, that's interesting. I suppose while you were speaking, it was bringing back a conversation I had with my wife when I was preaching, because she, and I don't know if this is a good thing. I mean, but she always says to me, when you preach, we don't really know where you're going with it, but it's always towards the end you bring it together, and that's the impact.
Yeah.
Where you like to see the end, the big picture, and how we get there. It's natural for me just to say, listen, I want to take you on a journey. Okay, let's apply a bit of faith. Let me confuse you a bit. Let me show you. But guess what? When it comes together at the end,
Gotcha.
it's a special moment,
Okay.
and you go, "Wow,
Okay.
I get it. So I guess it all works. It depends where you excel at, and that's where you've got to find your gift in that area and how you deliver it.
And knowing your students.
And knowing your students.
Know your students.
Know your students.
Know your students. So it's, you know, I'm just telling you the way I learn, the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
I like it, and different. Know your students.
Mm.
Okay. Another adjective is teach people how to work. That brings us back to the principle of never doing anything for a student that he is capable of doing for himself. If you do, you'll make him or her an educationally crippled. So don't do anything for students that they can do themselves. Let me give you an example, if I could. This guy can do with students. It's like this parent. It's like a parent. The child, for example, I'm just using child examples. They want to put a shirt on, they're doing their buttons, for example. And because of time restraints, they just want to, the parent jumps in and wants to do the buttons for themselves. Could you just allow the students, okay, it's probably, allow the child, might take a little bit of time, but allow them to figure out the buttons for themselves. Don't jump in there and try and, what happens is that you make them cripple because you stunt their development as a child, you know, you stunt their development by jumping in all the time. If they can do it themselves, allow them the time to learn it. I know it's going to take some time. Allow them the time to learn. That's it. That's a parenting
And you
example.
practice what you preach, because I see that's the way you are with your kids.
I
You
try.
will take that time,
Yeah.
and you will give them that life lesson, and then move on. And to be quite honest, I've actually learned off you those steps in my life, how to be with my children, to bring me back to reality a bit and say, hey, connect and focus. I don't think I was in the beginning. I was just so consumed in work.
Gotcha.
I was just, yep, not a problem.
Go through a
Okay,
process.
Yep, I'll do it. Yep, but then when I saw the way you were interacting, I thought, you know what, I can learn off this guy. And I did.
And yeah, it's really good. And you know, I learn off so many different people. But more, this is the one thing that stands out to me. It's not about, you know, say we're discussing parenting, for example. It's not about. Yeah.
How'd you finish yours so quick?
Because I just gulp it down, bang. It's about my parenting style, for example, and you can use that example for your teaching style. My parenting style is about parenting for when I'm not there.
Yes.
I don't want a parent
Yes.
to control a child right now.
Yes.
It's about giving them opportunities of an understanding and learning about what is required of them, so that when I'm not there, they can access the information and make a decision without me. Why I try to parent is I try to parent for when I'm not there. Okay, can the child then access the information that I've given them and make a decision independently when I'm not there? It's the same way I think in education.
That's valuable. That's valuable.
Yeah, and it's the same way in education. It's not about, can you make a decision? Can you think right now? Or could you answer me that question right now? Have you given that, you know, you want to educate for when you're not there. Have they retained that information? Do you know? And so
I'm locking that one in here.
So how do I do that?
Yeah.
And just try to figure that out. Have you given them enough information for them to access for when you're not there? Think about that.
Yeah, and I think just little things. I remember being on your farm. Now, as you know, I don't have any boys, but the closest thing to a boy, I have my daughter, Alana.
Love
She
you,
probably
Alana.
won't see this, but that's all right. And if she
Love her.
does,
Love her.
she's my boy. Anyway, and one of the things that I wanted to do was just to take her out when we were on your farm. I put an axe in her hand and I said, Daddy, chop that tree down. And the way she was handling that axe, it was a bit awkward. And I said, Daddy, let me show you. And I made it persist until that tree came down. There's not going to be any greenies watching this, is there?
Well, no, there isn't.
You know what? It's for the glory of God, whatever. Anyway, we're not.
We need it for firewood.
We
Peter.
need it for firewood. That's what. So I think just little things like that, focusing and saying, "Let me teach you something." Let them attempt it, show them, and then let them fulfill it.
100%. And I know what you're saying. And the struggle with that, Peter, is allowing them to fail, man.
Yes.
Allowing them to fail. That is, giving them the right times. And we're talking about teaching here. I mean, we're discussing parenting, for example. We just drifted off, but it's you're still guiding and teaching children. It's the same thing with your teaching. Allow them the opportunities to stumble a little bit and to pick it up.
It's so funny you're saying that, because this is one of the conversations I've had recently with one of our leaders.
Yep.
We're changing things around.
Yep.
And I was having this conversation in regards to preparing curriculum in a certain division within our church, right?
Yep.
And the leader did make a point and said, look, we like to give them all the information, so it makes it easier for them to give the lesson.
Yep.
You know what? I had to ponder on that.
Mm-hmm.
And is that right? Should I be giving a teacher all the information? So I kind of changed my process in this kind of thinking, and I said to this leader, you know what? Let's give them 3 points with an application. Let them go back, study it. Her comment to me was, look, they might stumble over that while giving their lesson. And my exact words were, good. Let them fail. Let them make a mistake. Let them find themselves while they're teaching. They have to go on a journey as well. Teachers need to learn that if you study an application, if you get these 3 points with the application, study itself, you're going to deliver it better. But if I give you everything you're going to say, you're just a robot that's going to regurgitate what's on that piece of paper. And this was my whole thing about creating curriculum. Teacher, go back, study material. If you want to be serious about your teaching, you will apply some time to your teaching. It's not up to the person to provide you with a full list of credentials and say, regurgitate it. It doesn't work that way. You want to be an effective teacher? Study it, think about it, and I tell you, I promise you, and I say this, when teachers began to apply that method, they became brilliant in what they were doing.
Excellent.
And if they fall, let them fall. If they fail, they'll find themselves. That happened to me in preaching. There was moments where I went and got off the pulpit and went and kneeled, so no one would see me, because I felt I didn't put enough time in. I took it for granted. You have to learn these steps.
You didn't put enough time in.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
There's times that you failed, and what I think that is great with just giving them the points. They need to put some time in. They need to put some time in to know that to know their points, know their topic, and really embody that, so they can deliver it to get a result.
And I promise you, Bobby, when a teacher does that,
be a more effective teacher.
they are, and they don't realise it. But here's the thing, right? We've been speaking all along about studying, and God equips.
God equips.
And we've tackled that before. If you don't think you can, God can. You just got to go for that journey. Faith is about covering your eyes and taking that leap of faith, taking your first step. If you're not prepared to do that, then I'm sorry, you're not going to be an effective Christian.
Good point. Good point. God is able. If you're willing, He's able. There's no doubt about it. He just wants to see. He just wants to see your intentions, your intent and your intentions, and He moves on that. I can give another experience, but I'll move on anyway.
Okay.
Read this. It says here. Let me read this passage here, and we'll move on to the next point. Okay? Allow me to read this passage. Never forget that your task is to develop people who are self-directed, who are disciplined, and who do what they do because they chose to do it. That's why I suggest you spend more time questioning answers than answering questions.
That's new. I've not thought about that.
Questioning answers instead of answering questions. Our job is not to give quick and easy answers. Patient medicine solutions that never work in the realness of life. It's far better to have students leave your class scratching their heads with questions they think and talk about, and with and with problems they're eager to find solutions for in the week ahead.
Ooh.
Then you know you've got some education going on, rather than the polite yawns you usually get. And before we leave the subject, be assured that it takes work to get people to work. There's an interesting passage. I've highlighted that because I thought, oh, this is interesting passage.
Wow. I don't know how to digest that.
There we go. So
I struggle with it.
I suggest you spend more time questioning answers than answering questions. So if they've given an answer, spend time questioning that answer. Okay, let's get into that a little bit more.
Okay.
What do you sort of think about that?
Look, I'm struggling with it. I think that's a good point, and obviously this author's way more experienced than what I am. I kind of struggle with it because if a child has a question, I cannot help but try and give him clarity over that question.
Sure.
But I do understand the long-term effects of challenging a child to go and research the answer. So I think the question is this: do I say to a child here and there in front of the class, you know what? I'm going to let you think about it. And you come back to me. Dwell on it, meditate on it, and tell me, what does the Holy Spirit say to you?
Yep.
So that's a good point. Have I done it? I don't know. I can't remember.
Anyway, it's a thought.
It's a thought.
For you to access if you need to at different times. It's not.
Okay.
It's not a blanket for the whole class. It's just a thought that they've pulled out here.
Yes. Questioning answers. Okay.
Questioning answers
Lock it in.
instead of answering questions. Yeah. Let's continue. So this is another point in your books. It's got basic skills here. If you're going to teach students to think, to learn, and to work, then help them master 4 basic skills: reading, writing, and listening, and speaking. Okay, so there's 4 basic skills. It says reading, writing, listening, and speaking. What's interesting is the skill is listening. That's a skill that I'm working on. So, give your students creative opportunities to express themselves on paper. Listening and speaking. So, good teachers is a good listener, even for yourself. Become a good listener. Give them opportunities to articulate their faith. You learn to speak by speaking. So just give them opportunities to. It says here, reading, obviously to read, and they've got their contents to read. Writing, give them opportunities to articulate thoughts on paper. It says here as well, articulate thoughts on paper. You as a teacher, become a good listener and allow them to become a good listener and give them opportunities to speak. It says here, you learn to speak by speaking. What do you think about that? This is really part of the, it really dives into here as educating these kids on
Something's just entering my mind right now. How would I apply that? And I was just thinking, what application can I give the child to kind of develop what you just read? You know what? I like the fact that something that I don't hardly do with our senior kids is give an application from the Bible, let them go break up in groups, and challenging them to give me their thoughts on that particular passage.
You don't challenge them enough to do that?
Not on paper. Will that make a difference? Maybe so, because if you're penciling down your thought, maybe it helps them to learn better. And I know some of our younger children are probably having that experience with their teachers, but I don't do it. But you know what? It's something that I'll probably consider from here on in.
You know what I appreciate about you, Peter?
What?
Your self-reflection. Your self-reflection, and then it allows you to grow as a teacher. I can tell why you've been an effective teacher is because you self-reflect and you never shy away from, I haven't been doing something or I have been doing something. So that's just what I observed of you. Self-reflection, you're only going to develop and grow as a teacher because you're not scared, you're not shying away from things you're not doing. It's really good.
I think you've got to be real at the end of the day. God knows who you are, so if you want to kid people, you can't.
You want to grow as a teacher, you're doing something, you're not doing something, continue, and you know what? I've got to change things up. That's great. Good stuff. All right. this is one of the last ones here. So we're just about to finish up on this last one. And it says, a foundation called failure. Wow. We don't want kids to come in to the classes or want to teach them and we don't want them to fail. But look what it says here, Peter. Failure is a necessary part of the learning process. What does that mean? Okay, and it heads on here, and you guys read in your book again, it gives an example of a child learning how to walk. For example, a child, an adult, a child or a toddler doesn't just, look, they're walkers now. No, they started the walking process, and when they started putting one step in front of the other, they fell, and they didn't just give up because they have fallen, but they've got back up and they continue that. Now they can walk 2 steps and they've fallen. Now they can walk 5 steps and they've fallen. But the end result is they become walkers now. And so basically what it's saying, no one gets up and walks. He gets up and walks. He falls and he walks. And the more he learns to walk, the less he falls. Though the time never comes when falling is not a live option. In other words, the more you fail less, and it's part of the learning process, is what it's saying here. Taste of failure. The taste of failure provided one of the greatest learning experiences.
I agree with that. I think, and I stand strong by this, in order to succeed, you must fail. And if you personalize that a bit and you look at your own life, you'll see your greatest learning moments is where you failed.
100%.
And here's the thing, right? When 100%. You do fail, you have to be prepared to get back on that horse and bolt. Some people, when they fail, they stay there in a rut and they continue to complain. What separates a solid Christian from a weak Christian is the ability to get back onto your feet and keep going. Again, when I preached that day, my boat was heavily rocked. And I thought, is this how it's going to be from here on in? But I remember going back and praying and fasting even harder to say, Lord, I do not want to go through that again. So I'm very conscious about applying prayer before I preach. So I say to teachers, you might not have a great teaching session, or you might fail by leading a group of teens or a group of kids, but you just don't stop. And that's why I've got no problems in teachers failing. Mm-hmm. How else are you going to grow? How else are you going to learn? And that goes for anything in life, Bob.
Gotcha. And so that's teachers failing, and it's fine. But this as well, as teachers teaching, educating, is talking about also students failing.
So how would they fail? How would you?
If you're not getting things right, or they don't know an answer to something and things like that, they're going to fail. That's fine. That's part of the learning process. I think what I would suggest as teachers, make sure that it's a safe place for them to fail. They're not going to get knocked on the head. You just create a safe environment for them to fail. And we don't want to set them up for failure, I think, but it gives them an opportunity to if they've stumbled, to get back up and get back up on their feet in that learning area. Do you know what I mean?
So I'll ask you a question then, Bob. There's a particular method that I apply when I'm teaching. Tell me if you agree with it, if you disagree with it, if you can just kind of refine me in a way.
I'll try.
When I ask a question and it's a blatant wrong answer, I've got no problems in saying to a student...
1 second. If you've asked a question and the answer they've given is just wrong.
Wrong.
Yeah.
I've got no problems in saying, wrong answer, but you're thinking.
Yeah.
You keep going.
Wow.
Because that's what I want you to do. I want you to get 1,000 questions wrong, but I want you to keep thinking. So that's what I kind of do, because I don't want them to feel afraid that, if I say, is it wrong? Mm-hmm. So I kind of sometimes bring a bit of light to that person and say, that's what I want. They're having a go. Okay, everyone else, what do you think? Don't be afraid. Because there's some questions I ask, I go, mate, this is way over your heads. It's going to be a tough one for you, but if you can get the answer, hey, I stand corrected. And I kind of just build them up. And that kind
So,
of
so if you were to say to me, wrong answer, but you're thinking, you haven't shot me down. If you're saying it to me, and I'm just thinking, me, then it's wrong answer, but you're thinking, I will go back into thinking, okay, that's the wrong answer. And then you've allowed the process to continue for me.
and they get there.
Yeah.
I challenge them and I tweak them until I get to the answer. And I said, great. That's called thinking.
Yeah, and that's part of the learning process. There's no doubt the times of my schooling and things like that, I've kept my mouth closed because I don't know the answer. I'm like, don't ask me. At those times, I haven't not been thinking. I haven't been engaged in my learning. So, yeah, it's just saying that, engaging and just allowing children to fail, creating a safe environment for them to fail.
Be comfortable.
It's a process, and the more you fail in a way, the less you'll fail, and the learning will take place. Okay? Some things to think about they've written into this book. So it's part of the process. Create a safe environment for them to fail. Okay. Special cases. This says here, teaching is both a science and an art. Okay. Okay. There's a lot of another exception, concerns with special needs for encouragement and help for various reasons, as the students get involved in the challenging process of learning, which of necessity involves experiencing failure. They are more likely to give up. Let me read that again. For various reasons, as these students get involved in the challenging process of learning, which of necessity involves experiencing failure, they are more likely to give up. In the process of failing, it's easy for them to say, I don't know, I can't make it. That would have been me. So through this process, where, it's a process where they're failing, they've got tendencies to give up and keep their mouth closed because they don't want to. So it's just saying here, just be aware of that. Be aware of that. Like I said, if you make it safe for them, but you're thinking, it's a wrong answer, but you're thinking. Things like that it doesn't shut me off. It just allows me to get back onto the horse and continue thinking.
It's okay to fail.
Yeah,
It's not a bad thing.
yeah. It's okay to fail. It tells me that you're engaged at least.
Yeah.
I have learned that my primary task is to convincingly tell the students, I believe in you. You're going to make it. Encouragement. Encouragement is important. Reassurance, encouragement. That's on page number 52.
You're going to make it.
You're going to make it. Encourage them is important.
Yeah.
This, a couple of words of encouragement, Peter, goes a long way, mate.
Yeah, I know.
It goes a long way. Even to me as an adult right now, a couple of words of encouragement just sets me off fuels me up to keep going,
You fuel me up, Bobby.
Hey?
You fuel me
I
up.
feel you
I
up,
feel like
Peter.
I'm a rocket ship when I'm around you.
I love it, Peter. I love it. That's what I do. But how much more the students? How much more the students?
True.
Finally, a word of warning, no turning back. Though it may take time, once you get people over the barrier and into the true joy of discovery and learning, they can never again settle for education that is less exciting. So they'll never be satisfied with anything less than a deep involvement in the learning process.
There you go. So I feel sorry for the next teacher that's going to cover you.
And that's that, Peter. That's the education, the law of education. A quick glimpse into that. Hopefully that's been helpful. A little quick recap on what we've just learnt here. So a little recap. The way people learn determines how you teach. You've got different learning styles. Good teachers can't be focused on what they do, but on what their students are doing. Be focused on what they're doing, how they're reading. Is it going over their heads? Have they got an understanding? Don't be focused on how you're delivering, but what they're doing. There's no growth learning without tension. Okay, you've got to disturb that state of rest.
That equilibrium.
The
I like the word
equilibrium.
equilibrium.
I had a hard time with one of those words. Be prepared. If you don't know what you're doing, then the students aren't going to know what to do.
Study your material.
Know your stuff. Teach people how to think. Teach people how to learn. Teach people how to work. That's another area that's been covered. There's basic skills, 4 basic skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And lastly, failure is necessary. Gives the biggest learning experience in life. Okay. And one quote at the end here: knowledge cannot be passed like material substance from one mind to another. For thoughts are not objects which may be helped and handled. Ideas must be rethought, experiences must be re-experienced. So that's basically the law of the education. Hopefully that was helpful. Thanks again, Pete.
Very helpful.
Appreciate it.
Love your work,
To
Bob.
the next topic.
Yes, yes.